Opposites Puzzle Pairs by Ibu. Ibu is the second company that produces kids games, which I recommend to pay attention to. So this game of opposites isn't really a game. I would say it is a teaching aid. So to match the card for my kid of 3 years old, it took her very little time and she lost the interest. But I, as teacher, see there lots of potential here because sooner or later she's gonna need to refresh her memory about the opposites pairs and we can play it again, but when she's a little bit older, when she's gonna be maybe 4 years old. I still keep that game and I'm gonna use it later. As I said, this is a very much linguistic type of games that we use for teaching. Another game from Ebo Company is a fairy tale spin to play. The idea is to collect random elements and tell the story. Even though the game is supposed to be for the kids starting from 3 years old, we didn't have much fun. However, this type of game reminds me about classroom activities, so I kept it to use it later when my kid is going to be a little bit more proficient in the language, maybe for the next year or maybe for the age of 5. The significant advantage is that the game has props from different popular fairy tales that we were reading at that time, so it was topical. However, we never played the game in accordance to the rules. From the first glimpse, the game might be used for the age of 3, but we didn't succeed. The game age is very likely from 5 years and older. The reason why I think so is that when you randomly pull the elements of the story, the story itself becomes ironic or even grotesque. This layer of thinking and recycling language is not accessible for the kids at age of 3 due to limitations of overall psychological development or age development. That's why the idea behind this game is, of course, to enjoy the irony and grotesqueness of the story that you can compose out of the different random elements, um, but not sufficient and not appropriate for the age of 3. Not every child at that age is ready for the humor and ready to understand the humor. The game has potential in language development, but the age group should be, as I said earlier, older, or it could be very useful in the situations when the language is taught as a second or foreign language. So I would put it here. I would leave it this game in my recommendation, but you decide if you are gonna use it or not. Probably there is a sense to try it if it's gonna work with you. One more game that I would recommend you to start using as early as 2 years old is Unexpected Monopoly. The Monopoly game is, as we know, about property, money, counting, selling, buying, and following established procedures and rules and laws. The best part of this board game is that all those actions are in the context of the situation, so you don't teach your kids just counting for the sake of counting. You teach them to count money or properties with some purpose, such as to sell, to buy, or to rent, or I don't know, to pay taxes or to pay for something. The kids learn about the half of the life concepts through this game. I mean, just the general notions of the abstract notions as, let's say, money, right? Why we can use money and what for. Besides, it teaches about neatness and organization of the pieces on the board, which is also could be transferred into the real life. Therefore, when you introduce this game to the very young kids, the most intriguing part for them is to following some adult procedures. The linguistic load of the Monopoly is pure in the explanation of the actions, sequence of steps, abstract concepts, as I said, money, property, jail, etc. Plus, they are learning little micromotor skills such as using the dices, how to toss those dices, pick up the cards, put them back. So when you start playing with the younger kids, limit session to just taking the board out, taking the props, organizing those props, putting everything in the designated places, roll dice for a couple of times, and then put everything back. Unexpectedly, even 2.5, 3 years old kids fast grasp the concept of the game and they can play it in the simplified manner. Plus, you also deal heavily with the counting. Richard Scarry's Busy Town I Found It game. As most of the games, I use this game as a part of the bundle. We read Scary's books, then we watched Busy Town cartoons, and finally we had this game to play. As always, when there is a logical connected bundle of material, there is always a total blast for the little one. Richard Scarry's Busy Town, I found that game is age appropriate for 2-3 years old. For me, the indication that the game hits the age recommendation is when we can effortlessly follow the game rules. If for some reason we don't play the game as it's supposed to be, then there is potential disconnect between objectives of the game and age appropriateness. Visit Town Richard Scarry's board game carries signature drawing of the author. The game itself is easy, and my daughter was super excited to follow game procedures. In addition, finding objects was her favorite fun of that time, so we had a good time playing it. From language perspective, the main focus is on the development of the communicational skills and fluency. You may pick one of the languages of your household and play one round in that language. Let's say in English and another round in Spanish, and mix and match. So everything is up to you. Head bounce, head brush, the quick question game of what am I? The question who am I and what am I, and the answer to it, as well as the ability to describe different things, is an excellent linguistic exercise. You may start as early as 2-3 years old, depending on overall development of your child. Make sure the child knows the concepts and vocabulary in advance. For that, you need to take the deck before play and check every single picture. If you see that some of the pictures and objects your child doesn't know, please try to teach them in advance. So once you are sure that the child is aware of every single object in that deck, you can start playing. Well, if at the same time, if your child doesn't know, it's an excellent opportunity for you to teach them this new word. From the linguistic point of view, the game is about being able to ask questions. At some point, asking questions is the second most important skill after knowing of the vocabulary. So always keep in mind that playing these games about asking each other questions and answering is always a good linguistic tool for language development, regardless the type of language. We will talk more about those question games. At least I have a couple more games that is associated with the questions, but they are a little bit for the older age. So for beginning for age 2-3, this game is very suitable. So please try it out. Guess Who? The original guessing game. The game is one of those super linguistic games that boost language development in a concise time. The board has faces and names. The idea is that one player describes the appearance on the picture and the opponent is supposed to guess what person is that. I don't want to give you a review on how to play because there are multiple resources on the internet, including links on the resource page that you can find here. Please check them out. What I'd like to say is that it is a very linguistic game. I know it's used for language development in the many classrooms where English is a second language. It teaches and practices how to describe people's appearance, which is a very important skill. It allows to expand vocabulary and exercise the ability to ask questions. The same, the same. You can start using a game starting from 2-3 years old and all the way to the adult age. The first, it would be a little bit primitive for the younger kids, but later on you can add new words that describe appearance, so to make the game more profound in this aspect. For instance, instead of brown eyes and brown hair, start using the hazel. Instead of, as my daughter used to say, a skin color, um, start using the peach or ecru or pale or some other shades of this skin color, skin tone, or I don't know whichever is your color. So I highly recommend to use this game. Try it out around 3 years old and keep it for later on because it is definitely a good acquisition for your home library. Kids on Stage board game, the charade games for kids by Briar Patch Company. The good thing about this game is that it doesn't require reading skills so that you can play it with the kids from 2-3 years old. Another advantage, it develops abstract thinking without language mediation. Abstract thinking is a level of thinking about things that are removed from the facts of the here and now and from the specific examples. Thus, for example, a concrete thinker can think about the painting of this picture, particular picture, and the abstract thinker thinks about painting of the pictures in general, of the canvases in general. The critical part is that the ability to play game without using words. Paradoxically, for my topic in general, but from time to time, it is very beneficial to develop the gross motor skills instead of the language skill. I can explain why. For example, when you yell a fire, you probably imply a call for an action with the meaning of run or help, and that call is an urgent one. So we don't want people to start asking questions in this situation. We want them to start acting appropriately. The same is applicable for kids. Some themes should be learned on the level of body movements. When kids play this game, they learn how to express concepts with the help of the body language and mimics. It increases their overall development. Also, don't exclude the possibility of conducting this game and running this game in your home language, whether it's English or Spanish or Russian or any other language. So consider the playing one day, let's say in English, and another day, let's say in Spanish.